How frequently should I be tinkering with my campaigns? Things like bid adjustment, top of search, rest of search, product page, increasing, decreasing actual bids, negating, etc. Okay, so how often should you optimize your campaign? Optimize is the word we use oftentimes, but tinkering works very well as well. Because that's ultimately what you're doing is you're going in, you're flipping switches around and seeing what works and what doesn't. Some PPC experts will say you should be doing it every other day or every day. I believe do it as often as you need to. So maybe that's once a week. Maybe that's once every 2 weeks. It depends on how much you're spending. Now, most of our clients, we do more often than like every 2 weeks because they're spending enough money. So there's a sufficiency of data. But if, let's say, you spent $50 today and you come back in 2 days later and you spent $50 per day, you spend another $100. Depending on how many campaigns and how many keywords you're going after, you might not have a lot of data to really optimize. If, every time you go in, all you see is just onesie twosies of, 1 click here, 2 clicks there, you might have to give yourself more time to go back and optimize your campaigns because it's not worth spending a lot of time optimizing campaigns when you got 4 clicks where you're like, oh, I'm going to lower the bid. I'm going to increase the bid. You might have to give yourself a longer time horizon. You can look at a longer time horizon, like go back, like let's say 60 days, for example, with your bulk files. But if you go back 60 days, you don't want to keep going back 60 days, like every 2 days, because that would also not make sense. What it really comes down to is have data sufficiency. What is the exact answer of what that looks like? It depends. My feeling is do it as often as you need to without doing it more often and not doing it not often enough. And that's probably doesn't make a lot of sense. What I would suggest is probably initially check more often. And then you can start, as you get more optimized, you don't have to check it as often. So maybe you start off with maybe every 3 days. If this is, let's say, new campaigns, every 3 days, just check on them. How are they doing? Make sure nothing's blowing up. Like all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, I'm spending $100 a day on this one particular keyword and it's not selling. Why are they even allowing me? So you might want to look at things like that. But then over time, look at how much you're spending. Do you have some keywords with 10, 20, 30 clicks? Or is everything onesie twosies? If everything is onesie twosies because you're checking it every day, it may not be worth it. If you have, some keywords you're spending a lot of money on, if you're spending $100 a day on a particular keyword, then you probably want to optimize at least that keyword or that campaign more often. And then the rest, maybe you do less often. Not only is it from an account level, it depends. From a campaign level, it depends as well. Because you always want to give yourself as much time to look at as sufficient, but not overdo it. And, there's some people that get obsessed with it. And I think I was like this when I first started PPC, where it was like, I was checking it like 3 times a day. And it's like, not really that much has changed. And I could change the bid, but like the algorithm takes time before it starts figuring out like, okay, they raised the bid by 20 cents. So what are we doing? How's that with everything else? Give it time. Don't stress over it is my advice to everybody. Check it as often as you need to, but without doing too much checking. How much should my daily spend be for a new product and a new brand entering the market? What kind of keywords should I target? So if this is a new product and a new brand entering the market, don't spend more than you can afford to lose. With that said, be as aggressive as you possibly can. Just know that initially your goal is to get data and you can always optimize from there. Now, there comes a certain point where you got to say, I'm not going to go after a keyword just because it looks like a good keyword. I've had people ask me like, I've got this one keyword. It's a good keyword. It's a 300% ACoS. It's been that way for about 6 months. Well, that's not that good of a keyword. Maybe it looks like a good keyword because it's relevant because the big players in the space seem to be ranking for it, but maybe that's not the right keyword for you. So don't be afraid to pause keywords. You can always come back to them later. But as far as your question about how much should your daily spend be, one of the things to keep in mind with Amazon is you really can only spend up to whatever there is available to spend, and they will allow you to spend. That's going to come down a lot to what are people searching for and how many people are searching for that particular keyword. If you have maybe yoga mat has a lot more keywords than say 3D printing filament. I don't know. I'm assuming there's more people that do yoga than do 3D printing. I have a 3D printer, so I just happen to be looking at that. So look at what you're selling and what the potential is. If you want to sell, let's say 10 units a day, well, then you have to say, what is my cost per acquisition if all those units came from paid advertising? If let's say you're going after a 12% conversion rate, which is about every 8 or 9 clicks, let's say cost per click is about $1, just for ease of math, then if you need 8 clicks to get a sale and each click is going to cost you $1, it's going to cost you $8 to get a sale. So if you want 10 sales out of PPC, that's $80 a day. And eventually, hopefully you get to a point where there's enough market and enough people searching for your product that you can get those sales, and it maybe have at least an $80 to $100 per day budget. And that might feel uncomfortable in the beginning because you don't know, am I going to get any sales? And you might not get any. Ideally, you'll still get some sales as long as you've done relevant targeting. It's just how expensive will those sales be and how many people are searching for it. Now, you might have a total budget of $100. But if you are, going after a more highly searched term like yoga mats, then you might have the ability to have lots of long tail keywords you're also going for as well, because there's a lot of people searching for that. Whereas maybe if you're selling blue 3D printing filament, maybe that doesn't have as many people searching for it. So depending on how many people are competing for ranking for the paid side of those keywords, there might not be as much opportunity. So you might not get as many bites at the apple, so to speak. You might not get as many impressions, or your impressions may be lower down on the page or on page 2. You may have to work your way up even for paid advertising, let alone organic, to show up more. So initially, it's hard to say what your budget would be other than figure out like how many sales do you want to have? What is it going to cost you to get those sales? Ideal spreadsheet world. And then as Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So just know when you get out there to get punched in the mouth, you'll ideally get some sales, but the question is, what are they going to cost you? And are you going after the right keywords or not? And you totally won't know until you get out there. You might also say, I'm willing to spend $100, and you might spend $10 a day. You might have to really increase your budget. You might have to start that flywheel effect going of getting more sales before Amazon will even give you impressions, even for paid, or very many impressions. They'll usually give you some impressions for paid. Hopefully that answered your question. PPC course in Mag School, when isolating hero keywords in its own campaign, should I negate it in its old exact campaign to prevent duplicating same identical targets? Part of the canon of mag scripture, so to speak, is never negate a good keyword. That's one of our 10 commandments. So if a keyword is working well in one campaign, even if you want to isolate it in its own single keyword campaign, don't worry about the duplicate thing. People worry sometimes about, trying to deduplicate. Don't worry about that. Amazon's not going to make you outbid yourself. From everything I've always heard and read and experienced as well, we've seen that at Mag, and we've heard lots of other people outside of Mag say the same thing too. So I wouldn't worry too much about the duplicating, having identical targets. What ends up happening is sometimes the algorithm will like your new campaign with just the one keyword, which is what I think you're describing, and that takes off in the races. Other times there's history associated to that record ID for that particular keyword and that particular campaign for the old version of the exact match. And that one does better. Now, on paper, if you're giving lots of budget and higher bid and everything to this new campaign, it should do better, or at least get more impressions, but it might not. The other one might get more impressions. And why? No one really knows. Remember, this is not a human in the background, making these like strategic decisions. It's an algorithm. If this, then that. It's been programmed and reprogrammed over the years. So no one truly knows exactly. Like, even if you talk to the programmers at Amazon, they have an idea how it works. We have an idea how it works because we see the fruits on the back end of it. But at the end of the day, we say never negate a good keyword, because if it's good in one campaign and you move it to a new one, that doesn't mean it's going to perform the same in the new one. It could perform better. It could also perform worse. So you don't want to get rid of it where it was before. And that might seem like counterintuitive. If I'm trying to isolate it, don't worry about the isolation thing. Worry more about get the sales where you can get the sales. And if the sales are for a broad match version of it, great. Even if you're going after a single keyword in exact match, but somehow the broad match, even for that exact phrase, is getting all the impressions, let it. Sometimes it is what it is, and take the sales where you can get them. So that's my thoughts.
I know the Amazon grind can be overwhelming. From account issues to low traffic, it's a lot to handle. That's where my Amazon guy steps in. Scan the QR code or click the link, and let's work together to boost your sales and make your life easier.